Hi everyone, I'm Marg Murphy. I'm from Australia, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit more today about Black Moon Lilith. So I made a clip about 12 months ago for the New Paradigm Astrology community, and at that time Black Moon Lilith was sitting with Saturn at the galactic center around 27 degrees of Sagittarius. So they were having a big meeting. Started off, quite heated, I imagine, in Sag, and then they moved through a lot of their differences, worked out what needed to happen, and danced together. And I kind of came up with that analogy by looking deeply into an Aranda story, the indigenous people of the desert that I was living on at that time and where I made that film. And they talk about the big black hole at the galactic center being a place of celebration and sacred ceremony, and a place where men and women unusually come together to dance and create sacred ceremony. So I saw that as that's what Saturn and Lilith were doing. And since then, Saturn has moved into Capricorn. Lilith has been all the way through Capricorn and has moved quite a fair way through Aquarius. I feel like they're still talking to each other because Aquarius is traditionally ruled by Saturn. You might go with the Uranian rulership, depending on which way you view those stories. But there's a connection with Saturn and Lilith still because of her movement through Aquarius. And there's also a connection with Uranus because we need radical change. We very definitely need radical change. So Lilith's journey through Aquarius goes on for quite a while longer. I've got the cycle written down here, but I wanted you to know that if we look forward a year from today, she's in Aries. So over the next 12 months, Lilith, in her true movement, is going to be moving all backwards and forwards through Aquarius. She's actually going to get right back to about 13, 14 degrees of Capricorn, come forward through all of Aquarius, move through all of Pisces and into Aries. Now that's why we need to work with the true Black Moon Lilith, because it's a much more fluid dance. If we were just looking at Lilith moving into Pisces soon and staying in Pisces for 9 months, we would be missing 90% of the story, okay? So Kaipatra and I had a big conversation about this. He's put all that information out to you and encouraged you a few months ago to forget about Black Moon Lilith in the mean form, which is the mathematical term for average. We don't need to average out or tame her movement, her transit through our charts or through the sky. That's kind of like the masculine still trying to tame the feminine, the patriarchy trying to have control. And it's just such an old paradigm that it's come to us now in the astrological world. We need to let that go completely. We need to work always with the true movement of Lilith. There's no reason whatsoever to go with her in any other way. It's a much richer journey. So like I said, over the next 12 months, she's going to be moving through Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces and Aries. That's a huge, it's more than a quarter of the zodiac, more of a quarter of the circle of our charts. So she moves forward, she brings in new information, she moves backwards so that we can integrate. She moves forward again, she moves backwards. It's a beautiful dance that she does. And I know that Kaipatra has given you the ephemeris so that you can be tracking her degree by degree, day by day, and that's a beautiful thing to do. But I also drew the pattern that she made across an arc of the zodiac, and it really looks like a labyrinth. It's this incredible weaving and winding. And so that is, you know, when it came to me, that this is the true feminine movement, and this is what we need to work with. Some people used to work with the mean and the true, and they would create a zone or a Lilith channel or a Lilith river in their chart. That's no longer relevant, okay? That's not where we're moving. But what I've been looking at is, because Lilith comes so much from the pelvic bowl, that's her place within our body, that Kundalini area. And because she represents the dark mother, the matrix, and is very much connected to the shadow and our karmic and ancestral inheritances, I've been looking at Lilith in the 9 months prior to birth. And so this is something that I want to put out to the astrological community, the new paradigm community, as an idea for research. So if you go back 9 months from the time of your birth, give or take, if you know you were born very early or very late, and just track where Lilith was going. Where was she moving? For example, I have my Lilith in Aquarius. I'm in my Lilith return at the moment. Now, if I track back 9 months, will I find that she started that journey back in Scorpio, and her step into Aquarius, had she already been into Pisces while I was in the womb? How many signs and how many times did she cross the point that she was at when I was born? This brings in rich stories, really rich stories that we can work with about what we're holding in our shadow. Really important, interesting to go back and track this, to find out what particular aspects of the dark shadow that you're carrying in this incarnation by tracking back your womb time. So there'll be stories that you were working with, that your soul was working with in the womb, that may have been resolved and let go of in that time. Interesting for you to watch that, to look at that, and to think about where she is in your birth chart, and to note whether she'd been there before. So I'm feeling like if we go back and look at the 9 months previous and find that point, and then track her through that 9 months before birth, we create a new, rich, fertile Lilith zone in our chart that we can all begin to work with. This is new material. This is something that I think might be interesting and might help us develop a richer understanding of our own shadow. Lilith is deeply connected, intimately connected with the south node of the moon, the north node of the moon, and the moon. So I'm now working with Lilith and weaving stories between those 4 points in the chart, as well as the zone pre-birth. And this makes her story so much richer for us to work with. The south node is a point of karma and inheritance, and so is Lilith. The moon is our physical body and our emotional body, and Lilith is very much connected to all of that. And then the north node is that questing point where we're reaching out to. And of course, we walk the path backwards and forwards many times in a day, but we can't fully embrace the questing and reach that questing point without truly having worked in a very raw and open and honest way with ourselves, with our shadow material. Culturally, we avoid looking at that kind of stuff, and that's what's created this huge imbalance that we see now, this big I think of Lilith as being very connected to isms, sexism and racism particularly, because those viewpoints exile large groups of people. And we know that Lilith's story is very much about exile and taboo. And so we've seen with the, the last 12 months with the stories that have unfolded since Lilith and Saturn met up at the Galactic Center, we've seen a lot of exposure of systemic sexism and abuse of women. And we've seen reactions, we've seen, people blaming men, but it's not about men and women, we know that. It's about the masculine and the feminine as archetypal energies and restoring the balance. We can't restore the balance out there in community without restoring the balance within. And in order to restore the balance within, we really need to look deeply at our shadow and work with Lilith. So how do we do that? When I'm working with Lilith, I am reminded that predating the Judeo-Christian cosmology, Lilith was a wisp of wind and dust in the desert. And she is a desert being, a desert woman. And so, considering that idea of being a breath of wind, I begin working with Lilith with the breath. So, timely now too, because she's in Aquarius, an air sign. That's when it came to me. Working with Lilith and really breathing space into the body. Breathing space into the body, tuning into the body, doing a track, a connecting in with all parts of the body and a mapping of the body and finding the places where you've got blockages and tensions. Big concentration on the pelvic bowl region because a lot of us hold it there. And breathing space. So breathing space into areas of the body so that we can make space for Lilith. So we can make space to embody Lilith. Something I mentioned a lot in the previous film clip was that we need to embody these energies, not just talk about them. It's not just a mental pursuit. It has to be physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. So I breathe space into the body, and I encourage people in my workshops. We do a lot of breath work. And then to really after making the space to embody the energies that we need to at the time, I find some yoga poses that I feel are particularly relevant to the zone that we're in at the moment, at the time, and either do them as individual poses with deep breath work at the same time, or create a sequence. So, Lilith is going to be moving into a Aries, for example, by the end of this 12-month time. There's warrior pose, okay? And really feeling it and holding it until you can feel your legs shaking and letting Lilith really come in. And then after the physical freeing up, loosening of muscles and joints and bones, and the feeling that we're getting her into creating space and embodying her strength, doing some guided meditations, some visualizations, and often for me that's been taking people on a journey out into a desert environment and moving underground and meeting her underground as a metaphor for what's beneath and how to meet the shadow. And then I let people go on their own journey. I make space and time for them to communicate with Lilith. And it seems to have been a very powerful process. We must come back, of course, and then integrate what we've learned and what we've met and what we've faced within ourselves. We hide all that fear and grief and anger and angst down there, and in the hiding and the blocking and the ignoring of the shadow, we really also miss out on the light. So this is something that I've been working with and thinking about a lot lately. Quantum physicists, astrophysicists are now giving us this idea that 95% of our universe is dark matter. 95% of the universe is dark matter and dark energy. And if you think about Lilith representing the dark mother, well, matter and mother come from the same Latin root, mater, and so does the word matrix. So from the darkness also comes the light. So if we think of the feminine archetype as being, and Lilith as being the creator, that everything arises from, then what's out there in this world that we live in this 5% of light, of atoms and protons and molecules and everything that we perceive that creates this physical existence, it's come from the darkness. It's come from the sacred, deep feminine. So this exiling has created such an imbalance that what we see, what we're consciously aware of, is just completely out of whack. Now we have to go back into that darkness, into our own shadow point, our own shadow. We have to work with this consciously. So in that way, it's kind of like bringing light to the shadow in order to see what's very rich down there. Because when we face our fears and we acknowledge that I've been abusive, I've been unkind, I've been angry, I've been violent, I've done all of those things that I witness out there and you know, can be accusatory and despairing about. I hold all of those inside of me. We have to face all of that within ourselves and recognize that what we see out there in the collective really is a projection of what's inside. The thing about shadow is that it's not a negative. From the moment we breathe our first breath, from the moment we've birthed and come from the womb of the physical mother, but also the cosmic mother, we're growing our personalities, the light and the dark, and there's richness in darkness. 95% of the universe is dark matter, dark energy. It's not a void. It's something that we are exploring all of the time and understanding at a deeper level. So if we look at the darkness within ourselves, what we find when we go down there is that we've also been too ashamed or too embarrassed or too fearful of our own strengths and our own lightness and our own greatness. And so we've hidden that away as well. And I think that that's what Lilith is talking about now with Aquarius. And because we've also recently had the journey of the nodes through Aquarius and Leo, she's helped us through her Aquarian journey to push out, to recognize, to view things from a different standpoint, from a different viewpoint, Aquarius, and move more into the heart, and to recognize that it's okay to own the great things about ourselves and to share them as well, but to really face the shadow before we do that. And now I feel like there's this wonderful shift going on with the nodes now having moved from Aquarius Leo into Capricorn Cancer. So we've still got Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn, and Lilith's not finished with Capricorn. Like I said, she's going to get right back to about 13 degrees of Capricorn in coming months. So there's still this journey of really looking at the systems that we've established and the establishment, and recognizing the shadow that's created, moving again through all of Aquarius Pisces and developing compassion. And I think the Pisces journey is going to be where we recognize that that whole story of exile, of the exiling of ourselves from indigenous wisdom and indigenous knowledge, exiling ourselves from true communion with nature and wilderness, that compassion that we're going to build in the Lilith through Pisces time is going to help us break down those barriers, because collectively white people of the world have exiled indigenous people and removed their wisdom from ourselves, and it's their wisdom that we need to heal the earth and to heal our own intimate connection with nature. Lilith is about wilderness. She's about connecting intimately with nature. If we have an intimate relationship with nature, we're healing our own beings, but we're also healing Mother Earth and honouring the Mother, the deep, dark, feminine, sacred archetype, changing the matrix. And that's needed. And then it'll be really interesting to see how we move forward into Aries. So of course, when she moves through Pisces in the next 12 months, she's going to have journeying through Pisces, and she'll be meeting with Neptune. So really important to reconnect with sacred source. And I feel that we need to really honour, we need to develop, and even if you live in a city, you can develop an intimate relationship with a tree in a local park. If we can have intimacy with nature, if we can practice communion with nature and going out there and breathing and being silent, we know that we can heal. Just going to check and see if I've got things that I wanted to say that I haven't covered. So we have to work with courage, because it's not easy, and we have to remove ourselves from exile. We've exiled ourselves from our mother, which means we've exiled ourselves from Mother Earth, and we've exiled ourselves from our own hearts. So the whole journey, because of her intimate connection with the moon and the nodes, the next 18 months, she's going to be covering a large portion of the zodiac. She's going to be moving through, you know, a whole trine, probably a whole third of your chart. Track it, watch it really closely as the moon moves around each month. Come to know that Lilith zone in your chart in an intimate way, but particularly now looking at, she's moving, still having connection with Capricorn, looking at the nodes and looking at that idea of really breaking down the systems, really changing the systems so that we can come home to ourselves. North Node in Cancer. Coming home to ourselves, coming home to our heart, coming home to our mother, coming home to the womb. Black Moon Lilith is the womb. She's the matrix that holds us all. So let's really work with that, and let's remember that eclipses are times where the portal is open and really available to us. And I've looked at the eclipses coming up for the next year. There's eclipses in January, and in January the eclipse, Lilith is still in Aquarius in both January, and it's not until when we get to the lunar eclipse in July that she's actually in Pisces. So we have a lunar eclipse in Cancer and we have Lilith in Pisces. I think that's going to be a really potent time for us. Anyway, that's quite a few months away. We've all got a lot of work to do, and Black Moon Lilith is a really, really rich part of the chart to work with. So as a new paradigm community, let's really work consciously with our shadow, with Lilith through Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces and Aries zones of our own chart, so that we can change the vision for the collective. If we can imagine it, if we can envision it, we can make it real. We can bring it into physical matter and reality. So yeah, working with the true Lilith, looking at the zone, the stories that we've brought in through that gestation time, and watching her now tracking through the collective zones, the really collective zone of the zodiac, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, moving and shifting and changing. And that's what I've got to say to you today, and I wish you all well, and yeah, big love. Love first with the mother of us all, and that's the Lilith archetype, the sacred feminine. Let's restore the balance. Let's work collectively and individually to do that. Okay, thank you. Bye.